Good evening. How are you? Welcome. This evening I'm doing a sit and talk because we had rain today, and when I was busy and it wasn't raining, I couldn't get out. So that's the story. The story that focuses my attention today is a law story. It involves the confrontation between Trump and others and those migrants or considered aliens who are presently here. But it also is a subject for where does the Constitution play in this and how should it be handled and who are our champions who are fighting for the right approach. And there is a right approach and there's a way to do this instead of the, jackboot manner of Trump and his corrupt minions in and out of government. But in this case, we're going to be talking about in government. So the judge that's involved is a Milwaukee County Circuit Judge named Hannah Dugan. I don't know if she says Duggan or Dugan. I've heard it both ways, but I haven't heard her name. And the question is about a person who appeared in her court as a defendant in a domestic violence case. And it was on the calendar today, and he was there, as was his wife and others. And when I say there, I'm talking about a courtroom in the courthouse where this case was going to be heard along with others. Now, that's one set of players. The other set of players is the government came present with FBI and DHS and so forth. And they were there to arrest this individual. And they were going to arrest him based on some violation or other. Now, at this point, I can't say, because the documents don't give me sufficient information of the ones I could obtain anyhow, how valid or not it is to stop him in the first place. But one of the things that you have to understand about how the process works in the immigration world is that there are two kinds of warrants. There's a judicial warrant, and that's signed by a judge. And that means that a person came before the judge and said, I have probable cause of this, and so, Your Honor, I want you to issue a judicial warrant so I can go and serve this on the individual named in this application and effect an arrest. Now, the other kind of warrant is an administrative warrant. Now, this is where it gets a little duplicitous, shall we say. The administrative warrant is a warrant that may be signed by an officer of DHS or something like that. No judge, let me put it this way. A judge need not be involved, could be involved, and I haven't seen the document, so I can't tell you if one was involved in this case. But from one of the things I'm going to read to you, I think you'll be of the view that at least one judge, the judge in this case, who is at the center of the dispute, thought the warrant was only an administrative warrant, not a judicial warrant. And she did look at it, and so she had a position to see it and to know what it was. Now, an administrative warrant is very different in scope and effect from a judicial warrant. Now, it is also not required for a judicial warrant, for an administrative warrant to establish PC, probable cause, to convince an officer that they should act upon this. Now, administrative ICE agents can produce their own administrative warrant. Did they do that in this case? I haven't seen it again. But what I can tell you is, as a result of the judge's conduct of this case, and I'm going to describe it, the judge was arrested for obstructing the proper judicial exercise of arresting an individual that they believed or claimed to be an illegal alien. Okay, now, this all comes together in the following way. And excuse me, I'm moving into place an excerpt of an affidavit filed in the case, and I'm going to go through it with you. And keep in mind a couple of other things. This is not the first time these agents have come into the courthouse I guess, looking at the calendar or knowing somebody that they believe they have a right to seize is in that courthouse. So this is the third occasion that occurred. This is a state court, not a federal court, and the state court does not want to compromise the ability of individuals to come into the court and to invoke its authority or suffer from its authority because there's going to be somebody running around the hallway seeking to arrest them. They wouldn't be there but for that. So there has to be some procedure to work that out, and the chief judge for this courthouse was trying to work that out. It had not been resolved as of this date when this incident occurs. What is the incident that occurs? The incident is that the judge learns that these people are there, and she gets upset about it. Now I'm going to go to the affidavit filed in the charge, the charge against her for obstructing justice. And then we can talk about that a little bit more. It goes like this. Members of the arrest team, okay, that's the group. That's ICE and DHS, and that's the FBI and so forth. Members of the arrest team reported the following events after Judge Dugan learned of their presence and left the bench. So she was on the bench handling a calendar with cases in addition to the one involving the alleged alien. Judge Duncan and a judge in the adjoining chambers, Judge A, who was called in the affidavit, were both wearing judicial robes. They approached members of the arrest team in the public hallway. The clerk in the court had told them to get out of the courthouse, get them out of the courtroom where these proceedings were going on that the judge was officiating at. So they were in the hallway, a public hallway in the courthouse. Now, Judge A's courtroom, as I said, is located adjacent to Judge Dugan. And again, I'm reading to you from the affidavit of arrest for the judge herself after these events. Witnesses uniformly reported that Judge Dugan was visibly upset and had a confrontational, angry manner. Okay, now here's the exchange that I think is pivotal, both to her innocence, depending upon seeing the details that I haven't seen yet that others may have seen. So, if you follow in the days ahead, I'm sure we're going to get more details. For one thing, the former federal prosecutor who is representing the judge, as I understand it, you can be sure he's going to be filing something like I would about this case. So Judge Dugan addressed Deportation Officer A and asked if Deportation Officer A was present for a court appearance. What do you think he said? No. He responded no. Then Judge Dugan stated that Deportation Officer A would need to leave the courthouse. Deportation Officer A stated that he was there to effectuate an arrest. Who does that? You know, agents get out of their OGV, official government vehicle, and then they they don't walk to places. Okay, so this is what we have, this kind of crazy English, but that's what's in the affidavit. And the judge asked if Deportation Officer A had a judicial warrant, and Deportation Officer A responded, no, I have an administrative warrant. Judge Dugan said that Deportation Officer A, pardon my pause, needed a judicial warrant. Now, I assume, because I haven't seen the warrant, that what the judge is saying is that if a federal judge swears to it and says there's probable cause, then it's a judicial warrant. We have to handle it differently. If it's an administrative warrant and there's been really no review, independent review of the basis of the arrest that you seek, then, you know, this is a nothing. You have no business in the courthouse and you don't have a valid arrest warrant. Get the hell out of here. She didn't say that. I don't think I would have if I was wearing a robe or not. So Deportation Officer A told Judge Dugan that Deportation Officer A was in a public space and had a valid immigration warrant. Judge Dugan asked to see the administrative warrant, and Deportation Officer A offered to show it to her. Judge Dugan then demanded that the Deportation Officer A speak with the chief judge. Judge Dugan then had a similar interaction with the FBI Agent B and CBP Officer A, and after finding that they were not present for a court appearance, and they were with ICE, Judge Dugan ordered them to report to the chief judge's office. Now, the controversy picks up after this because the judge did some self-help, which is that she allowed the alleged alien to leave the courtroom and to get out of the courthouse. The agents got a hold of this information by observation or whatever, and they confronted him outside, and when they told him what it was, he tried to run away, and they arrested him. Then the various players on the Trump team come into action, and they're accusing the judge of obstructing justice and ignoring these issues that I'm talking about with you. Are they a defense? They may be a complete defense, and I don't know what else happened, and I'm reading to you from an affidavit, which is the version of facts that the government is propounding to arrest the judge. Now, it gets worse. You all remember Rudy Giuliani in his, various stages of life. And you probably know or remember that I tried hearings with Rudy Giuliani. I sold him my apartment in New York. I knew him when he was a very special person. Okay. The question here is, when you prosecute a case, what may you do? What should you do? So Rudy decided, we had a period of time when we were friends, so I still think I can call him Rudy, although I don't know who he is today. Rudy, when he became the U.S. attorney, he would arrest stockbrokers and financial officers in cases that involved really no violence at all. And the notion of arresting some of these people like drug dealers is that they have the power to flee and may. And if you have a defendant who might flee, that's something. But he did it to be sensational, in my opinion, to build himself into a political marvel who could run for mayor. And on the second time, he succeeded, becoming racist in the bargain. I think it's a fair charge. The question then is, what do we have here? What we have here is they arrested the judge outside the courthouse. Now, in the case of those stockbrokers, in my opinion, if I were to call up their attorney, and they usually had an attorney by the time a white-collar case was going to be indicted, and I said, will you produce your client at such and such a time and date in court? And then we can discuss what conditions, if any, are required for them to be at large on bail pending trial. Okay, now, Rudy didn't want to do that because he wouldn't get the publicity. He hasn't told me that. That's my inference. Now, the thing here is, why do you arrest a judge outside her courthouse when you can say, Madam, we're going to prosecute you for this crime, and if you don't have an attorney, have them, when you do, have them give us a ring, and here are the charges we're filing, and you should be in court on such and such a date so we can address these charges and whatever bail makes sense. That's what makes sense. But they arrested her. They didn't have to arrest her. They did it like they do all other things, to be brutal and unnecessary and hurtful. They can't do it right. Now, ask yourself, if what we are imagining about the Warrens is true, then they had a damaged, compromised, insufficient administrative warrant that did not justify an arrest. And they didn't have business in the courthouse, and so they were asked to leave. That's it. That's the whole case. If she's wrong, well, then I don't know that it's a criminal charge. In fact, I think it's not. But if it's some sort of criminal charge, I think it would be settled with an apology or something like that. And maybe somebody would sit down and work out a process to deal with this, because what the government wants to do is more like the SS officers in another time, with a person who was a genuine dictator rather than a wannabe dictator with a lesser mind and no redeeming features. So that's my take on this terrible situation with Duggan or Dugan. And I'm sure we'll get more details over this weekend and so forth. I guess it'll be the subject of the talking heads. I was surprised no one talked about the warrants. That is to say, whether it mattered if it was a judicial or administrative warrant, because I think that's the center of the question. After I left the U.S. Attorney's Office, I worked as a senior associate in a midtown law firm, Paletti, Frieden, Prasker, Feldman, and Gartner. A lot of former Supreme Court law clerks, powerful lawyers, and so forth. And I had the privilege to work with the senior partner, Herb Prasker. And one day we were getting ready for a hearing or something. And he says, you know what the weakness of some lawyers is? That there is a dead horse in the center of the room. Everybody can see it. Everybody knows it's important. And bad lawyers don't deal with that. They don't dig in and get at the heart of the matter and deal with that. Now, that doesn't mean you win, but it may mean it educates you how to settle the case. And very few things are as simple as a hand-to-hand drug buy. That means the agent's undercover, sells or buys heroin, say, and then it's all on tape and they go away. This is more difficult because politics is involved, power is involved, disregard of the law and appropriate procedures is at hand. And, as we go through this, we may find that it was calculated to result in this kind of Sturm und Drang. So that's what I have for today, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow when maybe it's not raining, and we're celebrating gardens tomorrow, so it'd be nice to be able to walk among these gardens and see something nice. Hope you're well. Hope you don't run into any agents seem to be loose and able to do whatever the hell they want to our Constitution and the individuals they're sworn to preserve and protect. Take care. Bye-bye.